Hey everyone, Wanderbot here, and welcome to, I guess, how to YouTube, or more per se, how to make a gaming YouTube channel. I guess that's more specific to what I do, and I don't want to be tapped as a resource for making a vlog channel. I'm not prepped for those. So before we go into any of that kind of division of detail, let's just get started. So I assume you're watching this video because you want to learn how to make a YouTube channel for the express purpose of recording games and putting them on the internet in some way, shape, or form. There's a billion different ways to do it, and I have my own way, and everybody else has their own. And so I'm going to try and keep most of this information relatively timeless and relatively vague, because honestly, I try watching these videos, 2 years after they go up, and a lot of the information is outdated. I saw a video that said, use X recording program, and that recording program no longer exists. So, like I said, gonna try and keep a lot of this kind of vague and more on the theoretical side of things than specifics, but there will be some, especially for those of you that are really lost on this process. So let's start with the first major step of making a YouTube channel, gaming YouTube channel, which is honestly preparing yourself. YouTubing is a lot of work. It's a lot of work and a lot of effort, and generally just a lot of time invested with not a lot of initial return. For those of you that are looking into YouTube as like kind of a get rich quick kind of thing, film a couple of Call of Duty videos, get 1,000 subscribers, 1,000,000 subscribers, that kind of stuff. It doesn't work. So if you're looking at YouTube as a potential like get rich quick scheme, look elsewhere, if only because like you'll be doing yourself a favor by doing it that way. This is a labor of love, and you have to have that first. So make sure that you are actually ready to spend some, blood, sweat, and tears on this before you even get, like, the barest of falling. Some people manage to get up there really quick, but for most people, you gotta toil for about a year, or maybe 3, before you can actually really see much of a return on this endeavor. But let me just say this now, it's a lot of fun. So if you are prepared and you are ready for this, then you're in for actually quite a fun ride. Okay, so now that you're ready and you want to make this channel a real thing, you're gonna need some stuff first, apart from just like your mindset being in the right place. So for starters, you're gonna need 4 things: a mic, a computer, recording software, and editing. There are other stuff, but these are kind of the most critical things. So the microphone is honestly probably the easiest part, or the hardest, depending on your budget. So fair warning before I get too much into this stuff, this is going to cost you a fair bit. If you're coming at this with absolutely nothing, it's going to cost almost $1,000, mainly because of the computer. But so the microphone generally is $50 to $100. Computers can be anywhere from, $300 to $2,000 or more if you're crazy. Recording software, conveniently, it tends to be cheap and free, and editing can be really expensive depending on what you do. So microphone-wise, let's go back to that and focus in a little bit. So there are a lot of different microphones on the market, and there's a couple of different types. There are headset microphones, which are probably the most common, and maybe something that you already have. I would shy away from those almost entirely. The microphone quality on a headset mic is generally fairly low quality, and if you want to get a good one, generally you have to shell out quite a lot of money, and you end up with headphones that are going to degrade faster than the mic. They have a short lifespan, and I would really recommend against them unless you do not have any other choices, or you already have one. What I would recommend are, I believe they're called cardioid microphones, but I guess I'm going to just throw out a pair of examples here, or a couple of them. So I personally use the Audio-Technica 2020, and it is an absolutely wonderful microphone. It's not too sensitive. You have to be within a couple of feet of it to actually get picked up, and the drop off is pretty harsh, but that's okay because like I don't want a microphone that can record a mouse 20 feet away from me. That's kind of inconvenient. You get a lot of extraneous sound in your footage, and you just don't want that. You want something that can pick you up well from a couple feet away, and that's it. And mind you, this is a mic meant for one person. This is not a mic meant for multiple people to sit in front of. I actually have 2 of these mics. I use one and Shell uses one, and they'll both hook into a a Steinberg UR22 Mark II audio interface. And so when picking on a mic, if you are going for two, you're going to need something like that. And I can get into the specifics more on this later. But so that's what I use. I also recommend pretty much anything that Audio-Technica makes. I also would recommend slightly tentatively the Blue line of microphones. There's the Blue Snowball and the Blue Yeti, specifically. I started with the Blue Snowball, which is good, but it didn't quite get the quality that I wanted out of it. So I upgraded it fairly quickly to get a Blue Yeti, which was awesome. Blue Yeti is a very powerful mic and can be used for recording like a 360 degree and can work for dual commentary if that's what you're trying to go for. Problem is the Blue Yeti well, the Blue Snowball is a bit cheap and a bit weak and stuff like that. So if you're just starting out, probably start there maybe, because that only runs you about 40-50, whereas the Yeti and the Audio-Technica 2020 cost about 100. But the other issue with the Blue Yeti is it can record a mouse 20 feet away from you. So you end up with a lot of extra noises in there that you probably don't want. If you live in a complete bubble of sound, then the Blue Yeti is probably going to be a little bit better. But again, it's pricey and maybe a little bit overpowered for what you need. So those are some basic microphone examples that I use. Honestly, I would recommend before picking one up, just do your research a little bit, look around Amazon, so on and so forth. You're going to need to kind of pick some of these things out on your own anyway, so I would really do your research and see what are the top microphones of the year that you're watching this video, because for all I know, somebody could be watching this in 2020 and blue microphones have been dead for 2 years. I have no idea. So do your research before you just blindly follow my advice here. Next up is computers. Now, this is where I'm going to get really vague, because I made my own computer. It's a pretty powerful desktop and ran me about $2,000. You don't need that. You really could actually make a gaming YouTube channel on a shoestring budget. The only problem is you're going to have to make sure that your shoestring budget computer can actually like handle it. So, for example, if you have like a $500 computer today, you're not going to be able to cover top of the line AAA games on maximum setting. It's just not going to work. When I started, I had a crappy laptop and I couldn't even record Mirror's Edge at the time. I was getting about 15 frames a second. And that was unacceptable, so I made the executive decision to largely only record games that obviously my laptop could handle, but also only record things that, indie games. Because indie games generally have less performance issues, or at least they tend to be less demanding, kind of depending on the game. And that actually worked out really well for me. So, again, if you want to cover big, new, shiny AAA games of maximum quality day of release, you're going to need a pretty hefty rig. But if you're not really interested in that sort of thing, or you're recording consoles, you're going to need you're going to be fine with a cheaper computer. Those aren't actually that demanding. Oh yeah, the last thing I forgot about hardware and software and whatever is a capture card. I'd mentioned if you're planning on recording console stuff, you're going to need a capture card. But you're not going to need a strong PC, and that remains true. Generally, capture cards don't actually use up too much of your computer's resources, so you can get away with recording a console with a cheaper computer, which is good because consoles tend to be a little bit pricey and the games tend to be even pricier, because you generally don't get the benefit of stuff like Steam sales and whatnot. And, a little bit more grab bag. And generally, if you're going to be a huge console gaming YouTuber, you're going to want multiple consoles, but that's besides the point. So, capture card. These are important, and honestly, I don't know much about them. I use an Elgato HD60, and it's wonderful. But at the point of you watching this video, it's probably going to be an outdated thing, and maybe not very good. So, my only real recommendation with capture cards is don't skimp on a capture card. You really don't want a bad capture card going into this, because quality is key. It needs to be able to do HD stuff, 720p at the very bare minimum, 1080p would be better, and possibly even 4K now that the industry's moving into that. But again, don't want to get into the specifics because the market could change years from now. I know there's stuff like, Blackmagic, Elgato, and a couple other brands. And again, this is one of those situations like the microphone where I would recommend going on Amazon, going on Newegg, going on the internet, and actually doing some research before you pick up one of these. Just because it is such an important piece of recording for consoles. You literally cannot do it otherwise, and I would not recommend using the built-in recording, sharing, streaming programs on those consoles, because they don't allow nearly the level of quality that you're going to need to succeed on YouTube. They can kind of work as a stopgap when you're starting out, but you're going to need, like, the real deal to make it anywhere. And generally, you can't, like, do multiplayer recordings very well. The audio quality kind of sucks. If you are trying to play multiplayer, and, oh geez. Yeah, the built-in editing software is garbage too. So there are some very distinct reasons why you want to get a capture card. But also, on the flip side, if you're not planning on doing consoles at all, you don't have to buy one of these, and that's nice, because your PC is probably going to be more expensive. So let's keep moving forward a little bit. Recording software. You can't just record a game out of the box, sort of. So a lot of companies are actually starting to get in on this. I know Windows has a recording software thing built in now, but I have no idea if it's any good, and I have not heard of anybody using it, so I'd probably shy away from that. Luckily, if you have an NVIDIA graphics card, and I think most people probably do, it actually comes with a program called Shadowplay, which specifically is a fairly decent recording program that can fairly low impact record almost anything. I have never used it just because I've never felt the need to, but I know quite a number of YouTubers that actually rather enjoy Shadowplay. So if you're on an absolute shoestring budget, that would be a very good option to look into. The other option is what I use, which is OBS. And there's two versions of OBS. OBS Studio, which is the current and only updated version, and then there's the older one. Make sure you get the current version, it's got a lot more features. And the reason why I use OBS over Shadowplay is because I record a lot of multiplayer stuff. And OBS lets you have multiple audio channels dedicated to TeamSpeak, your own microphone in the game. With programs like Shadowplay, generally you get your desktop audio, which is everything but your own mic, and then your mic. And so if you're playing with somebody else, the game audio gets mixed in with the TeamSpeak audio, and then you really have to make sure they're balanced well, otherwise people can't hear, you know, your friends over the mic, or over the internet, and at that point the collaboration session is wasted. So that's kind of a nitty-gritty detail that honestly you're probably going to have to trial and error your way through. But those are the two free programs that I would recommend. There are a couple paid programs, such as DxStory, Morillus Action, and Bandicam. They're all decent too, and I've heard people swear by them, but ultimately, since they cost money, even if it's 30 bucks, I just shy away from them. I prefer to use my free program that actually does more, because specifically in OBS's case, and why I like it so much, is it also lets me stream with the same program with minimal extra setup, and it's so seamless and nice. So generally, just get OBS and figure it out. It takes a little bit to learn, but it's totally worth it. So the last, and potentially one of the most expensive pieces of the setup here, is your editing software. There are a couple of options, but honestly, you're gonna have to spend some money on this. So again, if you're going at this with a shoestring budget, you're gonna have to either hit a wall here, or just suck it up and deal with it. So I personally use Adobe Premiere. It's a wonderful program, it's really powerful, renders videos really fast, and generally has the most features. That doesn't necessarily make it better. I barely even use like 10% of them, if even, but I have been nothing but happy with it for my entire YouTube career. There are alternatives. So Premiere at this point, I don't know if you can even buy a license for it that isn't a monthly fee, but as it stands, generally to get access to Premiere, you have to go through the Creative Cloud, which is a subscription service that lets you, you know, pay a monthly fee and you get access to various Adobe products. I pay for all of them, so I get Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere, and a bunch of other programs I don't use. For me specifically, Illustrator and Photoshop are how I make my nice thumbnails, and Premiere is how I edit my videos, so it's kind of a no-brainer for me. There are alternatives to those. If you can't pay for these things and you need something like Photoshop as well, GIMP is a viable, if ugly and lower feature alternative, but it is there if you need it. But if you're also not able to afford Premiere and the Creative Cloud subscription, there is a good alternative, which is the Sony Movie Studio and or Sony Vegas combination. So Sony Vegas is the I guess main Sony movie editing software. It's a bit expensive. It's like $300 to $500, but it offers almost as many features as Premiere, and is generally quite good. Sony Movie Studio is the lower feature, kind of bad version, but it has just enough for a starting gaming YouTube channel to use and work with without really slowing you down too much. So if you need the bare minimum, and really generally unless you're doing some really insane stuff, all you need is the bare minimum, then I would actually recommend Sony Movie Studio, and you can get it through Steam if you're kind of lazy and like that platform. I do. Okay, so now that you've got your hardware, your software, and the mental state to make a gaming YouTube channel, I guess the next step, the no-brainer next step, is to actually make the channel. So, assuming you're going through YouTube, seeing as that's kind of what the main focus of this is, or Twitch, or Mixer, or Hitbox, or any of the other streaming services, just go to the site and sign up. At this point, they've changed it so much that I actually don't know how to sign up for a YouTube channel anymore. I mean, I'm sure there's a button for it, but I don't think I've been logged out of YouTube for years. But you could just sign up through it and make an account and so on and so forth. That's not really what this part is about, though. What is important about making your channel is your naming, your branding, and a good URL. Those are to me, the three most important things. Admittedly, YouTube has kind of made it harder to brand your channels now, so at this point it's just a banner. You used to have like an old background and a bunch of other things that you could do. But still, it's important to have a good name and a really, really good set of branding. So when I say branding, I mean your like little icon picture, your banner, your thumbnails, everything like that. When people come to my channel, they see a Wanderbot banner, a Wanderbot icon, and a bunch of rather nicely designed thumbnails, and that's been a very consistent style for me because those lead to growth. If people see a channel that looks hideous and it looks like they're really not trying to make good thumbnails there, they're generally just not going to click on the videos. They're not going to click on the channel because they're going to be like, okay, this is a low quality channel. People are fickle beasts, and they will see something that is not aesthetically pleasing, and unless they have a very specific reason to check it out, or morbid curiosity to see why it's so bad, generally they'll just move on to somebody that actually has really nice looking thumbnails. I'd say one of the main reasons why, what's a good example? Game Grumps, Northern Lion, Bear Taffy, a bunch of those YouTubers do so well is because, apart from their own natural charisma and so on and so forth, they have damn good branding, and they look absolutely wonderful. And in comparison, you know, no-name YouTube channel that doesn't have any thumbnails, that has a banner that's just like some anime something or other, and, you know, a name that's like, you know, Thrifty Gamer XX22, like, who are you going to click on? Game Grumps with their nice branding, or this guy who just has a generic screenshot from the game chosen by YouTube during the upload process? It's kind of a no-brainer. So you need to have a channel that is actually visually attractive, just because that's how you draw people in. So as far as branding goes, if you can't do art, either find somebody you know that can, or just bite the bullet and pay somebody to do it. It really doesn't take that much effort to actually make something that looks passable, at least passable enough that people aren't going to go after you for it. But there are sites like Fiverr or various subreddits on Reddit, I think specifically for artists and designers that are looking for work. And I would highly recommend finding a good artist. Don't just go with the cheapest option on Fiverr specifically, because oftentimes you get a lot of stolen assets, and you do not want to find out 2 years down the line that all of the nice branding that you've put on your channel was actually stolen from some, you know, nice small artist who is now really pissed at you and DMCAing your entire channel because, hey, look, your branding was based off of their stolen artwork. Yay. Yeah, you don't want to do that. Make sure you get a good reputable artist, and make sure you get some good reputable art that's going to drive your channel forward. Even just like a basic, like, little cartoon head, you know, Game Grumps style, can go a long way at bringing people to your videos. But I also mentioned naming. You don't want to have a bad channel name. I brought up Thrifty Gamer XXX, 22 or whatever the number was. Nobody's going to remember that, generally. You want to find something that is nice and memorable and whatever. I brought up Game Grumps. There's Game Grumps, there's Northern Lion, Bear Taffy, Cryotic, Markiplier, Blitzkriegsler, Evac, Splattercat Gaming. Like, these are all people that I'm just reading on my sidebar right now. But they all have nice, memorable names that, if you get popular, people are going to know you by that name. More people know me as Wanderbot than they know me by my own name. And I am proud of that name. Now, how do you even choose a name? That's kind of an important thing to ask. Honestly, that's all on you. I can't tell you who you are. It took me a couple of days to think up my name, and I'm glad I took the time to do so. Because imagine if you managed to make it up to a million subscribers, and your name is Thrifty Gamer XXX22. Like, you're going to regret that by the end. You want to pick something that defines you, and you're proud of. And I guess as a last aside, once you've picked your name, make sure it's not something that is, make sure it's not something that's not safe for work or not family friendly. YouTube specifically has been demonetizing and cracking down on people that kind of come off as a little bit edgier, just because they're afraid of the whole ad rev thing. So if you want to be, gaming murderer, whatever, you're probably going to be in trouble, and you might not actually ever make any money from YouTube, because specifically your ads will be crap and or non-existent, because YouTube's like, nope. So try and keep it to something that's fairly safe for young kids and families and whatnot. Maybe not because you're appealing to them, but just because it will help you in the long run. Okay, so now that you've got the entire setup, the last thing that you're going to need is a style. Technically, you can develop this as you go along with your channel and stuff like that, but it's best to have this sort of thing in mind beforehand, because otherwise you might kind of switch styles, and that tends to kind of hurt your growth a little bit. So it's best to know what you want to do before you get into it. So during the last section, I mentioned a bunch of different YouTubers, and each one of them has their own distinct style, and they all stand out from each other for the most part. But they still kind of belong to a couple different families, and so let's get into them. So chronologically-ish, let's go through. So the oldest style, I guess, of gaming YouTube, gaming video stuff would be actually reviews and walkthroughs. I can't really talk about these just because reviews are a very specific and scripted thing, and less on comedy and more on specifically analyzing mechanics. If you want to get into gaming reviews, you're going to have to work on your writing first, and your specific points and so on and so forth. And I would actually recommend doing some research elsewhere. I could maybe help, but for the most part, it's just not my style, and I'm not useful there. But if you do want to get into reviews, then make sure you know what you're doing before you begin, because that becoming a gaming reviewer in this modern market can either work really well. I've seen some great reviewers pop up, shoot up meteorically, but I've seen a lot of them that have floundered in pure anonymity just because nobody's finding their reviews. It's harder to grow, or it's really easy to grow, and that is, again, something I can't really comment on. What I can comment on are more traditional styles of Let's Plays. So specifically, I have about the most traditional style possible. I do a series from episode 1 to episode finale, and generally I don't 100% everything, but I'm going through pure commentary, making jokes, having fun, and generally playing these things blind. You can do traditional Let's Plays not blind, and either you've played the game before, or you actually post-com your way through the game, where you record the game start to finish, generally 100%ing it, and then you go back through later and post-com over your activities. And there are a couple channels that do this really well, but you got to make sure that you're not getting into walkthrough territory, because it's hard to commentate once you've played a game before, or post-commentary in such a way that is actually comedic. Some people make it work. Some people make it work great. But you got to know that that's what you want to do, and you got to be prepared for it, because otherwise you can come off as a bit dry. Moving away from traditionalist stuff, there's highlights and high energy. These are playthroughs that are probably a little bit more famous now because of, you know, Jacksepticeye, Markiplier, Dragast, Blitzkrieg, so people that sit down and do, you know, either short or just highly edited videos with a lot of energy and a lot of, well, energy. Sorry, I'm kind of looping back on this, but like, you have to have a lot of either charm or charisma or whatever to make this work. If you're doing dry edits, that's going to take some effort, and you can make it work too. But that is a very distinct style that you might want to look into. And then lastly, as far as styles go, there's kind of group Let's Plays. These are more and more common now that Game Grumps are a thing, but generally group Let's Players rarely, if ever, do solo content, and generally kind of go a little bit more on the traditionalist side, or the, I guess, the achievement hunter style, where, you know, Game Grumps, they do a series start to finish. Sometimes, actually, oftentimes they don't finish it. But for the most part, their editing is fairly cut and dry, just, you know, minor edits here and there and fun things added in the middle. Whereas Achievement Hunter has multi-perspective editing, switching between everybody's perspective as part of the gameplay. So, say, when they're playing Minecraft, they switch between the perspectives to show the most interesting thing. That's super important for group Let's Plays if you can manage to do that sort of editing, because boy, is that entertaining to watch compared to, you know, just watching one person the entire time. But like I said, it takes a lot of work, and you have to know about that sort of thing going into it. My buddy Keith does that for our Dark Souls 3 playthrough that has taken over a year to come out, just because of how much time and effort it requires. But it is a very viable style, and something you should consider if you are going into this with friends. One point I should make about the group Let's Play thing before I even get started, and this is actually kind of critical. If you are planning on making a channel with somebody else, or multiple people, know where you stand first. A lot of channels have started and died because the people going into it weren't on the same page. I have had some really, really cool friends, some friends that I've met through YouTube or whatever, that started their channels, grew like crazy, were super high energy, everybody loved them, and then they stopped because one of the people wasn't interested. More personally, I tried to record a couple of episodes with my brother, just because I thought it would be fun, and he's nice and charismatic, and if you want to see that, it's my FDL series. But as we went on, he admitted to me that he really didn't actually like commentating, and he doesn't like watching YouTube videos with commentary. So from my perspective, it was very difficult to continue that sort of thing, because I was the one that had to keep the energy up, keep everything going, do all the work, and after a while, it just wasn't worth it to me. So make sure that if you are going into a group YouTube channel, that everybody else is on board, and or you have an exit strategy. The worst thing that could happen is you find out that suddenly, you know, your partner only wants to do no commentary Let's Plays, or worse, wants to just quit entirely. Like, you're gonna have to be ready for that, and you're either gonna have to kill the channel and make a new one for yourself, accept defeat, or just take the channel for yourself and just switch over entirely to solo content. Which is actually, it's totally survivable, but you need to have that in mind beforehand. It's a harsh thing to think about, but you gotta make sure that your channel can survive interpersonal disputes and so on and so forth, just in case. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I don't know. Anyway, so I guess the last thing before I get into just miscellaneous tips is get to work. That's it. That's the last step here. There's a lot more to be done, to be talked about. There's whole pages worth of notes that I have, specifically dealing with the nitty-gritty on YouTube. But the most important thing that you need to do to make a gaming YouTube channel is to just start. Load up that recording program or that capture card of yours, load up a game, hit record, make sure make absolute sure that everything is recording right, your audio, your video, everything. Do a test recording just to make double sure, and then start. But again, make sure that everything is working correctly. Nothing sucks more than losing a recording, especially your first. I definitely had that happen. I've had a lot of series start and fail because I wasn't set up properly, and there it goes. Lost time and lost motivation. So, make sure you're good to go, make sure it's not going to fail on you, and hit that record button. Okay, so now that you've gotten to work, let's actually get some basic tips in here before I go on. And this is going to be completely freeform. I tried to have some level of structure with this, but I don't have any. So when running a channel, there are a bunch of really important things that you want to keep in mind. First and foremost, and this is the absolute most important, consistency is key. If you are starting and running a gaming YouTube channel, you need to make sure that you have a schedule and you keep to it. Nobody wants to watch a YouTuber that does like a burst of 30 videos in a week and then goes away for a year. Nobody's going to subscribe to that channel, and very few people are going to stick around to watch those videos just because, like, it's impossible to keep up with that sort of thing. YouTubers are a dime a dozen nowadays, and unless you are like literal magic, you're going to be no one. There are YouTubers that can make that work, but if you're one of those people, this advice probably isn't useful for you. And if you think you're one of those people listening to this video, you're probably not, and you should actually, you know, sit down and be like, okay, I'm not literal magic. Let's get a schedule. All you need is a video a week, tops. Or not tops, bare minimum. Anything longer than that, you're verging in on, like, extreme highlights things like Donkey or whatever. And even then, he's fairly consistent. Or, you know, a review channel, and those are a completely different beast that I can't really speak of. But if you want to actually succeed and do well, you gotta have a schedule that people can kind of come back to and rely on. That's it. So, next bit is, if you are going to be picking games to cover, generally you want to cover newer games. Ideally, you want to cover games that actually haven't even come out yet. You want to cover a game before it comes out, but only like by about a week. Too much before that and you just don't get any views. But say, what's a good example of a game that came out this week? The End Is Nigh, Ed McMillan's platformer. If I were a YouTuber that had actually gotten my hands on The End Is Nigh a week beforehand, and I had a whole, you know, 7+ episodes out, plus secrets and a couple other things, people would actually find those videos the moment the game came out or leading up to it, and I get a lot of extra views. That's how growth works. People are searching on YouTube for new content to find constantly, and you need to make sure that you are out there in some way. Older series can get views. I still get comments on my freaking Banjo-Tooie playthrough. Somebody was asking me to continue it. I was like, I recorded that back in 2013 with a shitty mic on an emulator, and there's nothing about that series that can be continued. I'd have to start it over, but people still find it somehow, and they keep finding my old videos of practically everything. But they're a much smaller minority compared to the new people rolling in for new games. So new games are generally better than old. You can make old games work, but you gotta be prepared to get low growth. I have a lot of friends that specifically have covered only older games, and because they didn't have like prior fame or extreme charisma to rely on, generally they're still growing pretty slowly. They're growing, but it's slow. Okay, next up is SEO. So if you don't know what SEO is going into YouTube, do your research. SEO is incredibly important, and I'm not going to tell you how to do it. Mainly because, one, you need to know how to research these things. Two, because YouTube changes the algorithm frequently. You'll often find larger YouTubers complaining about how the algorithm has betrayed them and so on and so forth. And you know what? That's very well possibly true. Google is constantly optimizing the YouTube search engine system to try and maximize the amount of viewership that goes through that site, because that's how they make it profitable. So if it turns out that your videos are no longer profitable, and people aren't finding them anymore or interested in watching them, generally you'll get kind of shuffled away to a bin. And sometimes there's very little you can do about it, but the way that you try and offset that is with search engine optimization. So specifically making sure that you have good titles that actually have proper keywords that people will click on, descriptions that have useful links to other videos, and also some buzzwords in there, though it's not as useful. And tags. Tags are the most important thing. I'll explain tags for a little bit here, at least. So tags are honestly the most overlooked feature when uploading a video, but so when I put up a video, I put in a title like, "Let's play The End Is Nigh, PC Gameplay Part 2, so many something or others." And then the description, which to me, I'm kind of lazy and I just copy the Steam game description plus a link to the Steam and, you know, my own links. But the tags, I go full hog on. So I do like, "Let's play The End Is Nigh, The End Is Nigh Let's Play, The End Is Nigh Part 1, The End Is Nigh Episode 1, The End Is Nigh PC Gameplay." That's stuff like that. Stuff that if somebody's looking for The End Is Nigh, they're going to find, hopefully, my video somewhere along that search listing. Technically, views are still some of the most important as far as like figuring out where you show up on the search engine. But if you have good SEO, you can actually show up on search results with people that have 10 times as many views as you do. I have had several series do incredibly well despite all competition just because I had the best SEO for it, and or the algorithm really loved me for some reason, I don't know. Sacrifice a goat to YouTube. Okay, so the next thing is find friends. You don't even have to record with friends. You don't even have to make a channel with friends. Just make sure you have some friends that are actually doing YouTube as well. Honestly, it's actually better that they have their own channels and they're running in parallel. I have two very specific friends, Bird and Keith. And I've known them since I started my channel for the most part. And if it weren't for them, I might still be where I am, but I probably wouldn't be. I owe a lot to their help, their advice, and just, you know, leaning on them as emotional, moral, and so on and so forth. I guess I also do have Shell in this process, but she is more of an emotional and moral support as opposed to a direct YouTube resource. But like Keith specifically taught me more than I care to admit to his face, especially about SEO and whatnot. And he was incredibly useful getting started. And of course, I also record with him, and I make a ton of my content with him. It's so easy to sit down for a 3-hour gaming with friends session, way easier than sitting down for a solo session of 3 hours. And so, you know, I generally look forward to my multiplayer recording stuff because it's nice, it's fun, it's relaxing, so on and so forth. So yeah, find friends, especially friends that are just as committed to YouTube as you are. It does kind of suck when your friends quit. I've had a lot of friends quit over the years, and this is yeah, I could do a whole video talking about all the channels I've seen come and go. But it sucks when, you know, you have effectively a YouTube rival and they just give up and you're like, "But we were gonna do stuff together," and they're like, "Yeah, well, no, YouTube sucks, goodbye." And you're like, "Well, bye." Make sure you got friends that you can grow with, and if your friends do end up quitting, just find some new ones. It sounds impossible, but it really isn't. Okay, so next up is I'm getting into kind of the downer tips, but don't sacrifice your life for this. This should be obvious with any hobby, you know, World of Warcraft, gaming in general, crocheting, underwater basket weaving. You have more needs than just your subscriber count. And if you are getting into this, make sure that you're not neglecting things that need to be focused on. Your friendships, your family connections, your jobs, your education. If you're trying to juggle YouTube and other things, make sure it's not going to destroy your life, because to be totally honest, like I said earlier, it's got a pretty poor return rate early on, and if you end up losing your job over this, you're really going to either need some kind of like backup or something, because it's going to take a while before YouTube really kicks in, if ever. But kind of on the flip side, keep positive. Like, as long as you don't get like really down in the dumps and you just keep working, you will actually make it there. Especially as long as you don't neglect SEO, your thumbnails, making good content, consistency, so on and so forth. as look, choked on my own tongue there. As long as you're actually like, you know, working and, you know, going at this with a positive outlook, generally you can make it. It's just a matter of time. I mean, honestly, that's kind of useless information, but YouTube is kind of a numbers game, and one of the biggest numbers for it is just time invested. So I got a ton more tips. I got a ton more tricks. I got a ton more things that I could talk about, but honestly, that's it. That's all she wrote as far as how to make a gaming YouTube channel. I think for the next episode, if there is one, I can go over how I specifically record a video from start to finish. I'm a little bit leery about that just because recording programs are going to change, my recording process is going to change, and my editing process is going to change, and a lot of the information might not be as useful next time around. But, or next time around, in the future. But, if people really want me to do that sort of thing, then I totally can. But that will be the next episode. And so let's finish this one off. I hope you guys enjoyed this. It was a little bit odd for me. I don't do this sort of thing often, and if it was actually really helpful and you guys want to see more, let me know, and actually let me know what you want to see next, because yeah, like I said, I could do the process thing, or I could do other stuff if you want me to talk about SEO or picking a name, making friends on YouTube, picking what games to play. I think the next couple ones are going to be shorter too, just because this sort of thing takes a while to record and a while to edit. So yeah, just let me know in the comments below what I can record next, or what I should record next to help you guys out in, you know, getting started on this grand endeavor of making a gaming YouTube channel, or other stuff too. I mean, I can talk about anything. Let's be honest here. But so I guess with that, hopefully this video is helpful in some way, shape, or form, and hopefully I've provided some information that is incredibly useful to you going into this. So I guess the last thing before we go, and I guess one very important tip is, and I probably should have put this before, but I would highly recommend checking out reddit.com/r/let's play if you have made it this far, because that is an incredibly useful resource for growth. I got my start there, and I learned almost everything. I met my friends there, I met a ton of people, and I owe an insane amount of things to that community. And I'm throwing you guys to those wolves, but no, really, you can learn quite a lot from that specific place, more than even this video can tell you. So check it out and learn as much as you can before getting started. It'll make actually getting started and actually making a YouTube channel and actually growing as one just so much easier. So I guess this has been how to make a gaming YouTube channel. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.